Welcome to Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions to help animals. I'm Missy Woodward. I have some wonderful guests today, and they work in an interesting way. They incorporate helping animals and helping humans. Today I'm here with Dr. Lauren Lindner, and Matthew Simmons. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You are with a fabulous organization, and you work with vets. And we're not talking about veterinarians, we're talking about veterans, those wonderful people that have helped us here and protected our country. Parrotcare.org.
That's right.
Yeah, so I see that you've been fortunate enough to be working with the Veterans Administration here in Los Angeles, and you've incorporated an incredible program to help actually the vets, but help birds of all things. So tell me more about what you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. I really thought of this many years ago because my two loves were helping veterans and helping parrots, and that's actually what we're doing. And I am so pleased and blessed to feel like we can really do this and really help both species and combine these kinds of loves. I started to rescue parrots several years back, gosh, almost 20 now. Okay. And finding a place to put them because there's so many birds that need homes. What a perfect spot there at the VA hospital. And then to realize that the veterans coming back from Iraq and from other combat service, that they can come and take some time to get reintegrated into the community and get back into the workforce in a calm setting. This is a beautiful garden, 20-acre garden in the heart of the city. So they get to be there and take care of the birds and take care of themselves at the same time.
So you are a straight psychologist, but you also do something very interesting, ecopsychology. What is that?
I have an orientation towards looking at how the environment affects our psyche and vice versa.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So what are some of the cases or some of the situations where that would apply?
Well, we're seeing people becoming more affected by environmental catastrophe and thinking about things like global warming and whether or not there'll be polar bears in the next decade or two. So people are really becoming concerned and actually having some low-level depression and anxiety over this. And they sometimes don't really look at that as the source of their problems because there's no section in the diagnostic manuals that describe that, to date anyway. I'm sure that will change in time.
Now, Matthew, you are a veteran. Tell us a little bit about your service and how you came to be at the Veterans Administration.
Well, you know, everything kind of happens for a reason. I came out of high school. I joined the United States Navy. I got caught up and was over there for Desert Storm and Desert Shield. I came back and, you know, everything was fine. Everything was working out great for a little while. I started to have trouble sleeping, a few nightmares. I went and talked to the VA in Cincinnati. And they prescribed some medication to help me sleep, which seemed to be fine. I coupled that with, you know, a few too many glasses of wine and coming from a family of people who've had trouble in that area, and it really got out of control. I had trouble sleeping. I was, you know, drinking too much, things of that nature. So I came to the VA here in West Los Angeles. I was referred there because of my nightmares. They have a post-traumatic stress group and different classes, different seminars that you sit in. You deal with what used to be called combat trauma. And you talk about it, you talk about the incident, and you try to kind of like get it out from under you because like Dr. Linder talked about, you know, sometimes the anxiety or the depression underneath you're not aware of. I mean, like I wasn't necessarily aware that that was my problem, I was just aware there was something going on. So I spent about 6-8 months on the VA taking different classes, working at a program called New Directions. And just out of luck, I got introduced to Dr. Linder, and what's really happened for me is that it's very interesting. We have 30 birds. They're all individual creatures that have like certain meals that they want. Like some of them like lima beans, and some of them like fava beans, and some like peanut butter, and some like oatmeal, and some like sweet potatoes. And it's this whole like relationship that you have to develop with each individual animal because one parrot doesn't say to the other one like, okay, this guy's all right. You know, it'll be all right. You know, you can trust this guy. So you have to set up all these individual relationships, and it's really forced me to set up individual relationships with the bird, look at the way that I set up relationships with people, and be a lot more open and honest about who I am when I get into a relationship so that it kind of works out better. So although I wasn't big into like environmental services or psychology or any of that stuff, but since being introduced to Dr. Linder and the parrot care and working on the farm and kind of working at the vet's garden, I have to say it's made a big impact in my life, and I'm a different man for it.
Well, the sanctuary, Serenity Park Sanctuary, helping parrots, helping veterans. It's just fascinating. I see there's a picture of you there with one of the birds. It looks as though the bird had possibly have a problem eating some of the chest feathers off. I know that's a real problem when they've have separation anxiety or have had issues about loss of the person that had taken care of them. Very similar to what humans have. That disorder of, being alone, separation anxiety. And I know so many veterans have so many different issues, and it's not just the current veterans, people that may have been, served many years ago. Is that what you're seeing, people of all ages?
Absolutely. That's the nature of post-traumatic stress disorder. It can start decades after the initial trauma. And in that brochure you see Stanley, one of our other veterans. He's a U.S. Air Force veteran, and he was in Vietnam. Well, he was a Vietnam-era veteran. And he's in his 60s now, and he's working in this program too. And you were touching on something very important, and that is that all creatures, all vertebrates, have social brains. The idea of being alone is really, horrifying. Things like solitary confinement or, some kind of deprivation of, our senses, sensory deprivation. Those things are very, very difficult to withstand. And to put a bird in a cage for its entire long life, and as you know, these birds can live many decades. We have one bird that's in his 70s right now.
Right.
And they can live longer than that. So keeping them isolated and alone often results in things like traumatic stress, so that they will pull their feathers out like that bird you saw in the brochure. We have several birds who've been chewing and mutilating their feathers and even chewing into their skin, into their chest cavities.
So it's a real symbiotic relationship. The veterans and the parrots, they really have similar issues that they have to work out, that they're working on, and that you've found this way to combine them all.
You got it.
And it's a great thing. We actually have some tape of both of you, and actually the other gentleman's name was Stanley. And so we'll go ahead and roll that and look at how wonderful the place is where you work and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're here at Serenity Park with our two veterans. Stanley.
Hello, how are you?
Stanley's got Bobby on his shoulder, and Matthew. Matthew has
Sammy. Step
Sammy.
up. Step up. Up.
There you go.
Good girl. Good girl.
Sammy was our first rescue. She taught us everything we needed to know about parrots.
And, I guess, oh, Sam, no.
Bye, Sam.
Bye,
Sam
Sam.
wants to be back with her friends, the other cockatoos we rescued recently. And we've got several other aviaries with different species in it. All rescues, all here taken care of by the veterans who work here.
And I've been here about 6 months. Stanley's been here about 5. I never...
Going on 6.
Going on 6.
Really? Going on
I never had any experience with animals or birds or therapy or anything of that kind, and I have to say it's been wonderful. I mean, the experience with the birds and hanging out with the rescues and learning a lot from Dr. Linder and putting up with this old Gahoot. It's been good so far. I have to say it's been actually pretty fun.
Hi, Bobby.
Mama didn't get your sock yet.
We're going to get a sweater or sock for Bobby.
Yeah, huh?
For the winter.
He's the cold out here.
Oh, God, is that sweet?
Bobby hates me now. Can
Bobby
you see
won't
why?
let anybody else pet her. Oh, no wonder she's so spoiled.
And other than that, I mean, you can kind of see the aviary behind you is in disarray. We're getting ready for the winter. We're putting up some new, what did we call them?
Winter boxes.
Winter boxes or sheds or whatever you want to call them. I mean, basically to protect them from the elements, give them someplace warm, somewhere that they can kind of hang out as a group. So we're putting a new one in this corner, there's one in the other corner, one in the third corner. Since the birds tend to kind of pair up, we want to have enough space that they don't feel cramped and they don't feel threatened, and they have somewhere to go and kind of stay warm in the winter. We're also going to put in some heaters and some other things.
That's
but,
right. You can see these two grooming each other right there. They love each other.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, they came together.
Yes, they did.
They did.
They've
They
lived
came
together for 13 years before coming here. That's correct. Even though they're different species, they love each other.
That's just fascinating. What a wonderful relationship building situation you've created there. I mean, it's true relationships. You could see Stanley with the other bird just truly having this relationship that, like you said, nobody will let him touch him practically. Now, do you only have parrots, or do you have a lot of other types of birds?
We have parrots because we're based on the organization Association for Parrot Care, and it's the parrots that really are needing the most care. The indigenous birds, the wild birds, of course, need our help as well, but there are so many parrots. Ever since the show Beretta, there's been an exponential increase in the number of parrots being kept as pets. It's the third most popular pet in the country now, companion animal.
Wow. Dog, cat, then parrot?
Yes. I mean, there might be more fish actually, but I think that birds have surpassed that number now. There's an estimate of 30 to 60 million birds, and most people can't keep a parrot for its long lifetime.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I mean, even if they can keep it, they can't keep it the way that they should. And she alluded to that earlier about like small cages and being kept in an area where they don't have social interaction with another bird. I mean, the birds at our aviary, you know, not only do they have the social interaction of their own kind, but there's 4 different aviaries, and the birds, it's amazing. They're like multilingual. I mean, one species of bird can let out a distress call or start talking, and another bird will answer from another aviary. So there's also that whole social interaction. They can fly in our aviaries where they can't fly other places. So it's really, Dr. Lauren hints around it. I mean, not that they make bad pets, it's that we can't give them necessarily at home what they need. Especially in California where like space is limited and things like that. There's nowhere to give them an aviary. There's nowhere to let them fly. To feed them the right way, to put out the forage instead of having them eat out of a seed bowl, and to make their diet right and stuff like that. It's very difficult.
Also, the discrimination with landlords. You know, people don't like barking dogs. Well, screeching macaws and parrots and creatures like that, they discriminate.
And if you're a member of a parrot's flock, they're going to scream the second you walk out of the room, because it's unsafe for any member of the flock to be out of eyesight or earshot. So they're calling to you, and that could be the entire time you're at work. You know, your neighbors are listening to that.
Right. And then if you unfortunately had to let an animal go, you had no other place to live or whatever, to find a home is very, very difficult. To find a home.
And to find a good home, like Matthew was saying.
To find a good home, and the trauma, the animal, even if you found a good home, they oftentimes go through very great trauma being moved to a different location.
It's very true. They make strong attachments, and they really make lifelong attachments. Many of the species we have are monogamous for life.
Right.
So it's very difficult for them.
People have to truly think about planning for the life of the animal. When I was in college, there was a girl named Bird, and her name was Bird because she had a bird that her father had, her father's father had, and her father's father's father had. That bird was already 75 or 80 years old, and if people don't plan in their wills and their trusts and explain what's going to go on, even if they do hand it down, it's we have taken nature and brought it into our environment. Now what do we do?
We've made little private zoos in our own home. Many people would never do that to a dog and a cat, to leave it in a cage its entire life, feed it the same monotonous diet. But the other point is that even people who do want the best for their birds, their children don't necessarily want the birds to be passed on to them. And there's really not that many sanctuaries that are taking in parrots. There's just not enough sanctuaries to take in all these birds that need homes. And we have to really start thinking more about adoptions for parrots as well, although the number of homes are limited.
And then there's that, as we get more people involved, there's like this co-parenting thing that's kind of becoming popular, which is we'll have famous people or well-to-do people or people who've had birds before will come to our sanctuary, and they'll talk to the doctor about maybe getting a bird, because part of what parrot care does is adoption and rescue. And a lot of times what's found to be the best solution is for them to adopt or sponsor a bird and to keep it at our sanctuary, so that, number one, the bird gets social interaction every day from a human being. They also get the social interaction of the flock, the other birds, and then the person can come in and they know in a sense that, what's best for that bird is being done for that bird. Because not only is it, even if you build a really huge cage or a really huge aviary in the middle of Los Angeles, it's terrible air to breathe. It's just not a good place for like an exotic animal. Whereas, we're on 20 acres. in like the middle of like this green rolling hills, and there's a garden. There isn't a gas station for 5 miles. We have trouble getting electrical power back there. I mean, that's how far back we are. I mean, if you're at Jackie Robinson Stadium, we're another 200 yards behind that. I mean, a very, very like remote area. And it's just really good for the birds. We went to another sanctuary together, and we could tell that the birds there were unhappy because they were just screaming the whole time. They were upset. And you mentioned to me, you're like, well, I don't know. I mean, we're going to take some of these birds, and maybe they're going to be loud. And since they've come to our sanctuary, they do communicate with one another, but they don't just sit around screaming all the time. And even if you build a great aviary in your backyard, you're not going to have someone like Stanley or I or 30 other birds for your bird to talk to every day. So we've kind of encouraged people to, sponsor one of the aviaries, build a new aviary, name one of the birds, come in and kind of, in a sense, adopt the bird and give the bird really what it needs, which is that extra special attention. We have 2 volunteers that do that, and there's 2 or 3 birds that are bonded to these volunteers like you wouldn't believe. Sandra, who's one of our volunteers, when her car pulls up, the Amazon birds start coming down and start making noises and clicking their teeth and everything because they know she's going to come in and feed them hot oatmeal, which no one else does. So I mean, there's that's the way that you really make a relationship, and you really have to think about what's best for the bird. Be like putting a horse, like you mentioned you love horses, putting a horse in your garage.
Right.
Like it's a pretty big stall. Mm-hmm. You can clean the poop up. He can have lots of oats, but is it really good for your horse to, number 1, live in your garage, and number 2, the only place that he can trot around like the paved streets of whatever neighborhood you live in? And the answer is like, no, it's not good for the horse. He needs other horses.
My question is, how do I get to move in there? It sounds really nice.
A lot of people say that. We're just so fortunate to be able to be on this land, to be able to do this work. I mean,
how did you negotiate this to get this land?
I think the VA hospital recognized that there would be a benefit to veterans because that's their primary purpose, and they wanted to see something that would be helpful to veterans, and they were willing to take the risk on this, and it's worked out beautifully.
Now, was there some reconstruction you had to do first to be able to get this property fit for what it's like now?
Well, we essentially had a dilapidated basketball court, and we pulled up the asphalt by hand, and we created this beautiful little oasis in the middle of the city. And our volunteers are so wonderful. I mean, the people who do come and hand feed the birds and make toys and make banana bread, and we're really fortunate. We have a wonderful team of people, and the veterans are the heart and soul of it.
And so the veterans that are there can come visit at any time, or how does that work as far as the veterans that visit the VA there or permanently on site or temporarily on site? How does it work that they get to enjoy this as well?
Well, we just had our official grand opening in May, the end of May, but we are inviting the nursing home and the domiciliary and all the other programs, the recovery programs that are on campus there. And
one of the
invite
groups,
them there.
and one of the groups that I meet in, the PTS Street group I was telling you about, they've actually moved down to where we're at. We have a large, I think it's a redwood tree, that's right by the sanctuary that has some big overhanging branches and some shade. And they actually bring the veterans down there. They do the group for like an hour and a half, and then they go over to the cages and they see the birds and they walk around the aviary and they also go around the garden. So not only have we kind of sought out like, hey, come and enjoy this, it's kind of spread like a rumor. Like a lot of people at the VA are like, well, we never see any signs, but we were over at this one building and they said that this was the place to go. And I think I like that even more, like when people say that, rather than, hey, we caught a flyer, or so-and-so said, you have to come here. We get veterans who are like Korean war vets. I mean, guys who are there like dealing with serious issues like cancer, hearing loss, heart attacks. I mean, guys that really are at that point in their life where they're hit with a big struggle, and they love it. And they don't love it because it's, they get to interact with the birds and they feel so much better. It's just wonderful to go somewhere where it's peaceful, it's in the middle of LA, it's quiet. You just got done doing some horrible procedure at a hospital, and you don't even have to leave the grounds to go somewhere and enjoy nature.
You see, that's the other part of ecopsychology. He just summed it up.
Right.
The enjoyment and the pleasure and the serenity that we get from being in nature.
This is a whole new trend, I would hope, that would be beginning, that other VA hospitals and other facilities like this might think that this would be a wonderful outlet, not only for psychologists to work and interact with patients on a new level and incorporate nature and humans together, but that veterans, other people that deal with other kinds of issues from psychological to physical or whatever might have an outlet like this, but then blend the two, and that way, like this is set up as a nonprofit, it could be something that incorporates helping a nonprofit, helping a regular organization. It's a win-win for everyone, it really looks like.
It is, and we've gotten contacts from VAs all over the country, in fact, so you're right on it.
Oh, this will be wonderful. Would it be the sort of thing that you would look at, you're not looking at this as a pilot program, this is something that's existing and it's working and everybody knows that. Could you duplicate this relatively easily in one location to the next? Could you is it set up to where if somebody could say, we're going to do this there, would you have to physically go there and do it?
There are so many VAs that have large expanses of land like the West Los Angeles one does. So that it would be ideal because we're looking for places to be able to bring birds for their lifetime and also be of service to the veterans. So it really is ideal.
But she also kind of cuts herself short. I mean, Dr. Linder would have to be involved because you become part of an ecosystem. Okay, so temperatures are different in West LA than they are in Phoenix, than they are in San Francisco, and the birds, the mean temperature for them has to be a certain way, and they can't get wet, and they have to eat certain foods, and they have to have certain diets. So it would take someone, like Dr. Linder sitting there, maybe setting up the aviary, but then you'd have to be there for a while to kind of get it up and running so that it fits within the ecology of the environment. Otherwise, the birds would suffer, and that's not really what you want.
How do you feel this has changed your life?
What it's done is it's made me look at relationships differently. It really has. And it's made me respect animals and the environment and things that I never looked at before as being important, because I've learned that it all comes together and it all impacts me. And if I'm not aware of it, then it's going to push me places where I don't want to go. So
this is a new career for you, I guess.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I worked in computer software and business development for 12 years, and now I do this, and this couldn't be anything further from it. I mean, driving nice cars and a big condo to kind of doing this here. But this is not charity work. I mean, this is something that I really do love, and I really do enjoy it, and I probably wouldn't trade it for anything else.
Well, you're giving back also to your fellow service people, and that you're giving to the animals and you're giving to yourself.
Yeah, and I hate to be selfish, but I mean, I just feel like I get a lot out of it every day. I mean, I get a lot out of it with the animals and talking to Doc and planting bushes and putting in fountains and, dealing with the guys at the garden who are planting food for us, and we do food pickups. And I mean, it's become a really, really great thing. I like it.
Do you think that you will also have other groups come out there, people, possibly therapeutic groups, educational groups, children's groups? Do you foresee that?
Oh yes, we've already had school groups, and we're definitely looking forward to having more of that. We want it to be an educational, showpiece. Really, we'd love for other people to come and visit and be part of it. Absolutely.
And what about an educational spin-off for people going into psychology, the psychological field, to have an educational basis based just on this? I mean, is there any sort of possibility for that there could be a new way of training?
Well, you've just made me think of a new way. Absolutely. That's wonderful. I'm going to start having interns out there and psych assistants. That's wonderful.
Right, because I would think that would teach them a new way. I mean, Freud and Jung and all these people are wonderful, but you never thought about Polly Want a Cracker to be able to teach somebody a new way to think about things.
And also, you mentioned bringing children and doctors and different people out there. It's a totally different interaction to interact with a wild animal. I mean, I love dogs. I'm not a great cat person, but I mean, I know what a cat is, I know what a dog is, I know what a hamster, a rabbit, a horse. But I mean, like a wild parrot, it's totally, you can see it in their eyes. I mean, like when you finally get that animal to like trust you enough to come down and sit on your arm, or to put its beak against your chest and you kind of touch the top of its head. I mean, it's just amazing, because I mean, that's a wild animal. You would never be. I mean, some of these animals were caught in nets in faraway, islands, stuffed in crates and shipped over here. So the fact that this animal trusts me enough to come down and it's a wild animal, it'd be like walking up to a puma and like petting a jaguar or a puma at night. I mean, that would be like a real rush for me, and I definitely like that part of it also.
Now, the most important thing, your website name?
Parrotcare.org.
And can people come out and visit on a regular basis, or how is that set up for the public, general public?
We like to have people contact us and get, make sure that we're there. There's a farmers market actually that exists at the VA on Thursday afternoons, and it's part of the Veterans Garden. We are part of the Veterans Garden, which is a horticultural work therapy program, and this is a work therapy program for veterans. And we have people coming in from the farmers market on Thursdays. The rest of the week, the Vets Garden is open. They sell plants and flowers and edibles, but we prefer if people would contact us so we can be sure to be there and give them a tour.
And then also you want people to get involved, volunteer, decide to donate towards you or help you out. I mean, those are the important things to keep any sort of nonprofit going, and to help the veterans this way is so incredible. All that they give back and what they do for our country. They have this little thing that you can do, and you're doing such an enormous thing by helping the parrots too. I mean, and think of all the people that have parrots that don't know what they're going to do. This would be very inspirational for them to think that possibly this may be a place for them to, house their animal upon their death or whatever. I mean, there may be future ways that they can have that. In these last moments here, just briefly, what would you say is the best thing someone could do right now for an animal like a parrot that would make a better life for that parrot?
Try to either provide that parrot with another member of its own species or a larger living space. Make sure it can come out, hopefully it can fly and eat a varied diet. And ideally, if people want to sponsor a parrot at our sanctuary, we would give it the best life we can possibly do as a human.
Great. Thank you both so much for coming. Greatly appreciate all the wonderful work you do. It is so amazing. Thank you for joining us here on Critter Crusades, the show about ordinary people on extraordinary missions. Go out and make a difference. Thank you.
So this